Thank you so much to Jill Wardell for joining us. She is with UMBC and is an expert in workplace wellness. So just talk a little bit about how your HR experience evolved into now what is really, as you call it, which I love, reimagining workplace wellness.
Yeah, thanks, Tara. I came to UMBC in 2007. Part of the real premise of the position was to craft and create a training and organization development department from scratch. And as we were doing that, we were involved in a president's retreat, and where our then president, Freeman Hrabowski, made a comment about the size of the suites that were in the room, that we needed to do a better job about taking care of our people. And taking care of our people was not just a learning function, but it was also a function of wellness and well-being and what we were providing. And so at that moment, I looked at my then boss and I said, I think we can do that. And we started pulling together different stakeholders on campus that were responsible for wellness and well-being. I was just going through a master's program at the time at Maryland University of Integrative Health, and the master's was in transformative leadership and social change, but the school was a wellness school. And so in some ways, it was this thinking about wellness from an Eastern frame, and also not just as it relates to modality. You know, a lot of times when organizations think of wellness, they think of actions and different modalities that you can use to bring about wellness. So it's things like yoga and meditation and offering nutrition classes and, ergonomics and physical fitness, having personal training and things like that. And while all of those things are really good, outside of looking at it from a philosophical mindset and how are we thinking about creating cultures of wellness, we're not necessarily going to make the mark if we just simply put those modalities into practice. So I think over time, through starting out with some of those modalities, as what we were originally offering, we started to take our understanding of wellness and well-being a little deeper, which at the time was unusual, I will say. There were many other schools that were not even touching wellness with a 10-foot pole in our areas. They were, it was happening out of different parts of the university, like the University Health Services, for example. And then there was a migration of benefits providers looking at wellness, but it wasn't usually the training and organization development people that were looking at wellness. And so over time, through our kind of having a deeper level conversation is what constitutes well-being, not only for us individually, but organizationally, we started to explore more deeply a conversation that went beyond modality and more toward culture, which now feels really interesting with the pandemic, because that's the thing that everybody's interested in. They're interested in creating virtuous cultures of engagement and well-being, and they're recognizing that the organizations that have the most engaged employees are the ones that are focusing on well-being. And so it was just one of those uncanny, synchronistic kinds of journeys where something that started out seeming so strange to roll up under our area, now it's like perfectly timed to be the thing that we're offering, that I think is in some ways a key differentiator of our school from others.
Thank you for that deep dive, because you're right. It's so much more than what we stereotypically think of as wellness. Give me an example of something that would transcend the tangible, how you can now cultivate, as you describe, wellness through weaving it into the culture of the workplace.
Well, I think that there's lots of ways that we can do that as leaders. We are the ones that are the creators of culture. Everybody is, let's be honest, we're all co-creating our cultures all the time. And I think that leaders need to know the way and show the way and make space for wellness. And so part of the way that we do that is by facing forward what we're already doing to take care of ourselves, and letting our people know that self-care matters. And it matters not just in terms of your performance on the job. So it's elevating it beyond what it's going to mean for the organization, and more having a conversation about what it means for you as a human in terms of your own self-actualization, in terms of your ability to be a good partner, a good parent, a good colleague, a good friend. Why does taking care of yourself matter? So, because one of the things that we've seen a lot and we hear a lot, and I always push against it, is this notion that supervisors don't allow us to go and take breaks or participate in wellness related activities. And when I push into that, oftentimes I will say, well, have you actually heard that? And most of the time the answer is no, but they don't see the practice of it. And so not seeing the practice of it communicates just as much about someone's ability. Now, whether or not that's perception or reality, we could argue on that, right? But I think one of the ways that we can do this is to really show the way, role model our own self-care. That also means not staying and working until the cows come home, recognizing that work is always going to be here. And at some point we have to separate ourselves from what we think is urgent and important, because there's urgent things at home as well. And that we're not just our work selves, which brings me to another point. This idea, one of the most beautiful things I think the pandemic gifted us was the importance of empathetic leaders with high relational IQ. So we talk about EQ, IQ. I think relational IQ is now something that is like the new thing. And that is, how am I as a human with you? How am I being with you? How often am I checking in with you? Asking how you are, the importance of building rapport. So you can hear there's a lot of crossover here. Now we're kind of straddling the worlds of EQ, emotional intelligence, and also stress management, right? Because the leaders, part of our role is to also to create a culture of well-being. Well, we do that by paying attention to the mental health and well-being of our people. We don't just say, oh, you look stressed, go to a stress management class. Now, that's a check the box. That's something that we can say that we did, but what's that beautiful quote that says, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care? I think part of what our employees are asking of us is to care first. In that caring first then may lead them to go do a stress management workshop, but it shouldn't just be, pushing them off our plates to go somewhere else to get tended to, because what that says is your whole self is not welcome here. And if my whole self is not welcome here, then maybe my whole self will be welcome somewhere else. And so, that to me is a really important thing, that we recognize that people are holistic beings, that they don't just drop their hearts off at the door and check in with their heads. They have all of these pieces and parts to them that we need to be making space for. And it's not to say that we need to be therapists. It is to say that we need to recognize that there are things that get in the way, and maybe not in the way, maybe they're on the way of something better, I like to think, but sometimes they may look like they're getting in the way of our performance, that if we don't make space for it, we won't ever recognize it. So this is another very practical, tangible way that we can create a culture of well-being. And I think I want to say one more piece, and then I'll be quiet on this because you're getting me on a roll. We talked about leaders modeling what they are doing to take care of themselves. I think leaders also have to facing forward these conversations, and that means facing forward their own vulnerabilities. In order for us there's always a power differential, and we have to lead with that awareness. We should not be surprised if we are asking our colleagues, our employees, to be vulnerable. If they don't speak, it may be because we haven't gone first. We need the psychological safety happens when we say, here's something I'm dealing with. Here's something that's on my heart. I'm noticing this in me. I'm working on this. I need you to help support me. How can I support you? So it's making that space in an authentic way to slowly encourage people out of their shells. I kind of have this analogy of the turtle, we've been afraid for a really long time to really show ourselves. Now we're going to come out. And when they come out, then we need to embrace it. We need to not be like, oh, or use it against them. So that it's very slow, but I feel like there's a lot of change that's happening right now, in some ways exactly because of the pandemic and this VUCA world that we're living in, that is tremendously exciting.
Those are all great points. If I'm a leader in an organization where this concept of wellness has not been on the forefront, what are some first steps? How can we start small and build out a culture of, as you describe, letting people be themselves?
Oftentimes it's anecdotal. Oftentimes it's when people leave, we see it in our exit interviews. One of the things that people say they're going to miss when they leave UMBC is the developmental and the wellness opportunities that were available to them that they didn't expect and were wonderful. So it has become woven into our culture, but it didn't start out that way. It was a lot of trial and error, but I think overall it's a commitment. It's an organizational commitment. It's a leadership commitment. And then seeing that long game and facing forward, caring first, not for the sake of your own bottom line, but for the sake of the whole, for the community that you're creating. When people feel that, your bottom line is going to go.
Love that. And I love that your exit interviews are sort of the data to prove that you've really done a lot to change the culture. One last question. Is this now the new almost expectation for people looking for jobs? Will wellness and that culture around it be part of what a potential employee is searching for?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Employees today are looking for several things. They're looking for a way to align with meaningful work. This is not just millennials. I think, again, this is a gift of the pandemic. The pandemic woke us up to the importance of meaning at work. It's like, what matters now? Like, we're all asking that question. We want to do meaningful work. We're going to be at work for 8+ hours a day. We want to do meaningful work. So attachment to meaningful work, development as an expectation. I think that is absolutely critical. It's another piece that employees are looking for. They don't want to just show up and do the job. They want leadership that's going to say, we see you, we want to develop you, whether that be here or beyond. We want you to figure out what you're here on planet Earth to do and help you figure that out. And here are some opportunities. I think that's a second. And yes, absolutely a commitment to well-being, not just from a wellness perspective, a physical perspective, but a physical, emotional, nutritional, environmental, social, spiritual, all of those various components, physical, working in tandem, finding ways to either create space for people to take care of themselves or create some rituals for organizations to face forward that commitment. Yes. Or people that feel that they can bring their whole selves to work, they can tend to themselves, that matters, are going to stay. I think that the Gallup survey data is pointing to that's what's going to create engagement. So yes, these and many, many other things, but I would say these are some definitely really important trends for us all to be paying attention to.
Thank you so much for your time and your insight, and congratulations on really transforming the workplace at UMBC that I know you and so many others have worked so hard to get to that point. So it's great that you can now share those tips and tricks with others.
Thank you, Tara. This has been great. And for your work, really appreciate it.